Exiled to the Empire's deadliest territory, Leon should have vanished. Instead, his insight eye exposed every hidden future legend. He bought discarded talents before the world recognized their value. A starving witch, murder nun, and cowardly skeleton followed him. Monsters became workers, enemies became ransom, and wasteland became farmland. Every coin he spent purchased tomorrow's strongest gods. Then neighboring nobles invaded, expecting one effortless execution. Leon laughed because their entire kingdom had entered his trap. Lucy landed gracefully, her dark blue nun outfit flowing in the wind, looking like some kind of holy action movie star. The radiant fire crusaders ran away behind their shields like pros. Meanwhile, his Red Moon Knights, bless their hearts, got dragged into fighting undead monsters left and right. But Aurora, his light witch, was out there doing superhero stuff. She jumped into the air. Her silver hair exploded into a literal halo, and every ghoul within 50 meters had their eyeballs pop like grapes. Crashed onto the battlefield, 5 meters tall, dark red fur, bone spikes on his back, radiating blood moon energy like the world's worst nightlight. What followed was the messiest three-way fight Leon had ever seen. At one point, Aurora's light beams bounced off spiderweb traps and accidentally shattered the blood moon barrier's core. Lucy was good, but she was stuck dealing with wolves and monsters. Their vice captain, Vesey Frank, was just sitting inside his fancy fire shield, watching everything like it was a movie. Leon needed a play, a big brain play. He looked exactly like all of Lysander's skeleton soldiers, which meant he could walk right up to that necromancer without anyone noticing. "You're the greatest skeleton warrior ever. Remember when that guy tried to enslave you?" Leon promised Abing extra bones with every meal if the skeleton assassinated Lysander. He nodded so hard Leon thought his skull would fly off. So Abing burrowed underground, sneaked right under the battlefield, and popped up behind Lysander while the necromancer was busy fighting Aurora. He spun around, face twisted in pure shock and betrayal, staring at this random skeleton that had just violated him from behind. And that was the end of Lysander, the necromancer, taken out by a skeleton bribed with 3 bones per meal and a well-placed stab to the rear end. Leon had never been prouder of his employee. His skeleton employee literally assassinated a necromancer with a stab to the behind and got all the experience points. His little skeleton soldier transformed into a full-blown phantom knight. Aurora's final explosion wiped out about 80% of the monsters and wolves on the field, without Lysander pulling the strings. Then he screamed at his knights to retreat immediately, saying the Wolf King had set a trap, and he was right. While Red Moon watched carefully, wave after wave of gray-maned wolves running toward them, transforming into werewolves under the red moonlight. Leon always knew they were out here somewhere. More than a few wet their pants. Leon could smell it, and Leon wished Leon could not. Absolutely not. While Red Moon watched carefully, thankfully, Leon had purchased a huge stockpile of sun lamps before the crisis. The connected light pushed back the red moonlight, and the werewolves stopped in their tracks. Same reason they don't like Aurora. Him, Bess, Aurora, Lucy, and Abing in the center. Abing's 10 newly summoned skeleton soldiers on the outer ring. They were waiting for a peak midnight when the blood moon would be brightest and the sun lamps would lose their power. And right now, his enemy's enemy was the Wolf King. Leon needed to talk to Simba. But the Wolf King, he could think. Leon jumped onto Abing's skeleton horse. The skeleton horse looked impressive, although its bone saddle was brutally uncomfortable. Old Bess croaked out something about how this was suicide, that the werewolves had no reason, no logic. They'd never negotiate. If Leon did not go out there, when midnight hits and the lamps stop working, they were all dead anyway. Then Leon rode out on a skeleton horse, driven by a skeleton knight, whose signature move is stabbing people in the rear. Abing's skeleton horse jumped clean over everyone's heads like some kind of undead show pony. "Wolf King Simba," Leon yelled at the top of his lungs. Leon was Leon Edward, Lord of Red Moon Territory, and Leon had got a deal for you. Behind him, Leon heard everyone exhale at the same time. Little Aurora was biting her lip, wishing she was stronger. Nice to know she was ready to jump in if things went sideways. But Leon had a much better story prepared. The Radiant Fire Crusaders know it. After them comes a second wave, a third, a fourth, until your entire tribe is erased from the map. Leon pulled out his secret weapon, James Bett's letter, Asking for the Wolf King's heart to cure his daughter? Leon tossed it to a nearby werewolf, who passed it to Simba. What does this have to do with destroying his tribe? So, Leon hit him with the political soap opera. She adores her little sister, the sick one who needs your heart. So, she convinced the emperor to send army after army until your tribe surrenders and you hand over your heart. But Simba had zero knowledge of imperial politics. 1 second, Leon was on the horse. The next, Leon was pinned flat on the ground with a giant werewolf claw gripping his chin. Look into his eyes, he growled. Abing pulled his sword and charged to save him, but got dogpiled by other werewolves. His entire night order went into panic mode. Leon repeated word by word, staring directly into his giant golden eyes while trying not to gag. Simba picked him up off the ground like a rag doll. How? While Red Moon watched carefully, Leon offered to accept Simba's entire tribe beneath Red Moon Territory's protection. Leon knew you can't beat him alone anymore, but his Light Witch and his knights can help you take him down, literally. Simba stared at him like Leon just explained calculus to a dog. But if you follow him, citizenship, jobs, food, no more fighting to survive every single night. Leon was painting the most beautiful picture of civic integration a werewolf had ever heard. Full-on recruitment brochure energy. Here's the thing about werewolves that nobody tells you. So, basically, accepting werewolves into your territory is like adopting 100 dogs that turn into murder machines on a nightly schedule. But Leon said yes anyway because Leon was either a genius or an idiot. And honestly, Leon still did not know which. Leon laid out his whole plan. Basically, Leon was running Red Moon Territory like a company, and Simba just got promoted to department manager. Some outsider trying to steal Simba's throne and split the tribe. Office politics exist everywhere, even in wolf packs. Just like that, his knights stood there in stunned silence. 1. Leon could not believe his own eyes. Leon appreciate the enthusiasm, guys, but maybe warn a man before you launch him toward the sky he almost didn't live to see. So his knights had no idea their new boss was basically a medieval home alone enthusiast. Leon split everyone into 3 divisions: elite kill team, guard squad, 6 3-star knights, plus Abing's 10 skeleton soldiers, 16-person security team. Leon put the female ranger Doris in charge because she seemed like the only 3-star knight with actual brain cells. Clean the battlefield, fix houses, cook, farm, do chores. One Eye and Red Boots both begged to be in logistics. They look like kids who just found out recess was canceled. That's exactly enough to pay off Aurora's debt with 100 coins left over. Best employee investment Leon ever made. A third of their supply cart got destroyed, but the soil-improving potions and seeds survived. The demon-repelling stones could be picked up off the ground. Apparently slaughtering a bunch of undead monsters was therapeutic for her. Several of them whispered they'd happily work 10 extra years in Red Moon Territory if she'd date them. Leon had everyone eat together at one big table, but Bess had just barely survived a near-death experience and didn't have the energy to lecture him about aristocratic etiquette. For now, Leon tapped his glass. Leon believed that with their hard work, this place will become a thriving domain. Nobody at that dinner table believed him when Leon called this place a warm family. Their smiles agreed with their lord, but their eyes predicted everyone would die there. Leon felt touched, so Leon promised to build her a little church. You're kicking him off the hunting squad. Because here's the thing. Churches bring resources. Also, no people. No farming, no farming. No food, no food. No territory. Lucy smiled again, and every male knight in the room immediately lost brain function. Meanwhile, little Aurora sat in the corner pouting. The Lord's daughter was untouchable, which is exactly how Leon wanted it, even though she's technically his employee. Old Bess was shaking his head in the corner, muttering about how uncivilized this dinner was, how the Edward family had truly fallen from grace. After dinner, Leon pulled the hunting squad into his study for a meeting. 3 days to find the wolf tribe and kill the rival wolf king. No pressure. He wants to see if they were legit. Lucy also shook her head, which left Abing his skeleton knight, who also started shaking his head. Leon did not care if it's zombie worms. If you fail, Leon was confiscating all your bones and putting you on an all-vegetable diet. Abing's purple soul flames flickered with pure terror. Was Leon using a phantom knight as a glorified pest control spy network? Was it beneath his rank if they clear the field for you? No distractions. Can you beat a wolf king who's roughly twice as strong as Simba? Bess assigned the logistics crew to servant quarters. It felt almost cozy if you ignored the permanent blood-red moon hanging overhead, like a giant evil nightlight. The Radiant Fire Crusaders were back. They're here to loot their corpses? Vessi Frank and his crusaders came back, expecting to find a field full of dead adventurers and uncollected monster parts. Vessi rode up to the gate and spotted One Eye on guard. One Eye snapped back, while Red Moon watched carefully. Their lord is blessed with great fortune. The Crusader Knights drew their swords immediately, Bess at his side, hair probably a mess, looking like a very unimpressed homeowner. Leon stared through the bars at these armed idiots. Vessi Frank jumped off his horse with a big fake smile, waving at his knights to put their swords away. Vessi walked up to his gate and tried the smooth talk approach. But you've seen how strong the Wolf King is. Leon leaned against his iron gate in his bathrobe, like a man who definitely had the upper hand. Red Moon territory doesn't need Radiant Fire's help. Leon could see him mentally upgrading his threat level from pushover noble kid to actually annoying. But he wouldn't talk. Leon opened the gate, smiled warmly. 30 minutes later, they were the strongest knights in the south. The entire Radiant Fire Crusaders was now in his dungeon, beaten black and blue, screaming through the bars like angry puppies. So, Leon did his duty as lord and arrested the intruders. If they were alive but wounded, bully them or just straight up kill him and blame the Wolf King. Then steal Aurora. So, Leon had Aurora freshly recharged from dinner. Aurora's superpower isn't just light magic. Leon let one knight go to deliver a ransom message. The rest stayed in the dungeon as collectibles. Sir, the Radiant Fire Crusaders is famous in the south. Bess, you know who the Emperor's favorite mistress is? And whose daughter is Lady Brittany, the same guy who sent these clowns. Their dear Emperor is going to put Lady Brittany's head on a chopping block very soon. Leon happened to know she's been cheating on him. Leon spoke confidently because hidden intelligence had already exposed Brittany's affair. Brittany was next. While Red Moon watched carefully, just start counting the ransom money. The word money hit Best like a healing spell. He summoned an army of undead rodents and sent them scurrying across Red Moon territory to locate the wolf tribe. Leon never expected a promoted Phantom Knight to become a glorified undead intelligence officer. That meant the purification circle was working, squeezing the toxins out like popping a giant earth pimple. Then Leon got on one knee, pulled out a crystal dropper, and dripped emerald green potion onto the soil. The hard-packed earth became soft and fluffy right before their eyes. A few wild thistles popped up, touched the magic steam, and immediately withered back into fertilizer. Leon picked them up with silver tweezers like a surgeon and planted each one exactly 15 centimeters deep. The first note came out sharp enough to cut air, and the weed engravings carved on the flute suddenly sprouted tiny amber eyeballs. Leon was playing a haunted musical instrument and trying not to think about it. Within minutes, Leon was standing in front of an actual wheat field, waving in the breeze, the cursed wasteland where nothing grows. Leon lowered his haunted eyeball flute and tried to look like this was totally normal, and Leon absolutely did not almost pee himself when the flute grew eyes. Leon kept going until every piece of garbage land around the village was transformed into proper farmland with seeds of plenty growing in it. See, the difference between him and every other lord in this world is simple. Nobody wanted to invest in fixing bad soil when they could just fight over good soil. Only problem, the harvest flute nearly killed him every time Leon played it. This is the most ridiculous fitness motivation Leon had ever had. That evening, Lucy made dinner again. The manor's food budget was skyrocketing. But once their wheat came in, they wouldn't need to buy from four-leaf territory anymore. Abing watched everyone eat with the saddest purple soul flames Leon had ever seen. Abing sighed, an actual emotional human-sounding sigh, stood up, and walked out. You don't know your potential until someone pushes you. But Abing isn't a person. Aurora blushed slightly and started copying Lucy's table manners. His little light, which felt outclassed by a nun. She's the illegitimate daughter of northern nobility, and she was losing the etiquette competition to a church lady. It was a miracle every night, and the manor was head over heels for her. With Abing gone, Leon had to spar with one of his summoned skeleton soldiers. These guys had none of a banging's finesse and absolutely zero concept of holding back. Leon was getting chased around like a chew toy. Leon blamed the harvest flute for draining him. The skeleton soldier delivered one final roundhouse kick that launched him into a wall. Leon slid down and landed in the mud. The skeleton had no pay and no ears to hear him with. Leon brushed dirt off his clothes. Is Abing back yet? While Red Moon watched carefully. Next morning, Abing came trotting back on his ghost horse. He'd spent the entire night controlling undead rats and other low-level monsters, interrogating them for information, and he found the wolf tribe. He stared at Bess with the betrayed energy of a dog who was promised a treat. Abing's hips did a happy wiggle, and he followed Bess to the kitchen like a kid going to the candy store. Leon did not understand him, but Leon respected him. The plan was simple. Sneak into the wolf tribe, find the rival wolf king Carl, and capture him quietly. He's a giant skeleton on a ghost horse. Their wolves hate sunlight religion the way cats hate baths, Aurora asked with genuine confusion on her little face. Leon was still working on that part. Leon had got a plan, Leon announced, pulling out 2 full wolf pelts and draping one over himself like a fashion statement. But here's the thing, Leon explained, recovering quickly. They only wolf out under the red moon. So if Aurora and Leon wear these wolf pelts when the moon comes out, the smell covers them. But can you wash these things first? Aurora held the pelt at arm's length like it was a dead rat. But sir, Lucy raised a good point during the daytime when they're all human-shaped. Leon flicked his adventurer badge, the one Tom gave him when they signed that trade deal. The wolf tribe lives in Red Moon territory. The land grows nothing. While Red Moon watched carefully, adventurer merchants they disguise as traveling wolf clan traders. Oh, Leon totally already figured that out. Leon just didn't say anything because Leon was being modest, always making things complicated instead of just telling him. Then she felt something land on her head. A skeleton soldier drove the cart while Leon briefed Aurora on the rules inside. You're terrible at acting, so silence is your best disguise. It means you can attack. Rule 3. They were catching the new Wolf King only. Aurora's little face scrunched up like a raisin. You'd run out of mana, and then they'd both be dog food. There's a saying where Leon came from. Why do you always say weird stuff? Half a day later, they arrived at the wolf tribe's territory. Rough stone houses scattered through forest clearings, covered in moss, and crumbling thatch roofs. The Red Moon's influence had pushed them halfway between human and beast permanently. Here to do business. The guard squinted suspiciously, then peeked through the window and saw Aurora. She was wearing little wolf ears on her head as part of her disguise. They'd never seen anything as small and adorable as Aurora with fuzzy wolf ears. The guard cleared his throat, trying to stay professional. Leon slapped the raw meat stacked in the cart. His sister and Leon had been trading this route for a while, and Leon told him they were fellow wolf clan. The skeleton soldier got stopped at the gate, though. Leon parked the cart at the entrance, and Aurora and Leon walked in on foot. Outs, what are you doing here selling beef, little buddy? The kid's eyes went wide. They towered over them, yellow eyes burning, claws out, looking like they were about to skip the transaction and go straight to stealing. Aurora and Leon stood there surrounded by werewolves, ready to fight for their lives. Aurora had a light ball forming in her palm. Stupid magic monsters ruined their hunting for a whole month. Come to his house. While Red Moon watched carefully, Leon had got wolf fangs to sell. These terrifying killing machines were fighting over who got to buy beef from him first. Leon suddenly thought maybe Leon should just become a beef salesman and conquer this tribe through commerce. Leon still had his eye on that silver mine in the undead mountains. Aurora tugged his sleeve and whispered, "They don't have enough meat for everyone? Since everyone wants beef, bring him to your wolf king." The werewolves loved this idea and started shoving them forward. Then everyone stopped at a fork in the road and started arguing. Take them to Carl. While Red Moon watched carefully, Simba built this tribe from nothing. Outsider. Who are you going with? Leon now knew exactly where the tribal fault lines were, but Leon could not pick a side yet without blowing his cover. Okay. Leon just wanted to talk to whoever's in charge, but picking sides when his cover identity was a random beef merchant would be suspicious. Oh, she whispered when Leon explained. They stuck them in a stone hut with 2 guards outside, and minutes later both wolf kings showed up with their entourages. Carl was young, cocky, with the energy of someone who thought he was God's gift to wolfkind. Simba saw him and instantly understood the real situation. Leon, here you're selling beef. Carl said, stepping forward like he owned the conversation. One fight, one winner, and their merchant friend here gets his answer. Then Simba did something Leon was not prepared for. But Simba was pressing his face into wet dirt with genuine force, and Leon was genuinely choking. Let go of his brother, Aurora said in the stiffest, most robotic voice Leon had ever heard. Thankfully, werewolves are not known for their drama critic abilities. So nobody noticed. Simba released him and growled something about not letting outsiders divide the tribe. Translation: he couldn't beat Carl in a fair fight and was buying time. Meanwhile, the background werewolves were having their own important discussion about whether beef tastes better raw or grilled. Carl pulled him out of the mud with a friendly grin. Carl threw his head back, laughing. Simba's face went dark, but he said nothing. Leon considered giving Simba a raise before remembering the Wolf King had shoved his face into mud. Carl's supporters marched them toward his palace like a victory parade, leaving Simba and his people standing at the crossroads looking defeated. Simba stood there silently watching them leave, playing the defeated old king perfectly. Leon rubbed his hands together like the greasiest merchant you've ever seen. Leon did not bring much, just samples. Aurora copied him, rubbing her hands and squinting her eyes, trying to look cunning. No wolf can resist meat, especially after 2 weeks of eating vegetables. When Leon suggested sampling, everyone knew that meant eating, and Carl's entire fan club wanted to come along. Politics works the same everywhere, whether you're human or wolf. Bought him at the slave market in Four-Leaf Territory. They sell everything there. While Red Moon watched carefully, they instantly moved into position, surrounding Aurora and him from both sides, while Carl blocked the front triangle formation. The Four-Leaf slave market doesn't sell skeleton monsters. His hands swelled into massive deformed paws covered in fur, claws extending like kitchen knives. His 2 warriors popped their claws out too, ready to shred them into confetti. They were deep in the forest now. No need to keep pretending much longer. He was supposed to be the one outsmarting old Simba, and instead he got outsmarted by a random beef salesman. The only thing stopping them was the wolf tribe rule against eating their own kind. Carl will rip your throat out and hang you from a tree by your intestines, the other added helpfully. But what if your opponent is a witch? A witch in Red Moon Territory. Carl, be careful not to hurt the little witch lady. Aurora kicked one of them so hard, he flew through 3 bushes and a small tree. Aurora had covered them with black cloth bags to block the moonlight, and Leon turned on the sun lamps inside the cart. Let them go, you cowardly humans. Carl threatened to tear Leon apart when the Red Moon returned. The skeleton soldier whipped the horses, and they bounced away through the forest at maximum speed. But what if this was too easy? So, Leon did what any responsible lord would do. Leon interrogated them, while Red Moon watched carefully. You let them catch you on purpose, didn't you? Talk or Leon used the secret weapon. Carl and his warriors looked at him like Leon was insane. The moment Leon waved it under their noses, 3 fearsome wolf warriors transformed into the dumbest, happiest puppies you've ever seen. She held up the wolf mint and examined it like a scientist discovering a new element. How did it turn them into that wolf mint? Also destroys every shred of their warrior reputation. They brought all 3 back to the manor and threw them in the dungeon alongside the Radiant Fire Crusaders. The Lord of Red Moon Territory was becoming the continent's most aggressive jailer, one beef scam at a time. Lucy greeted him with her trademark angelic smile and let him inside. Leon wanted Simba to see Carl and his 2 buddies locked up and miserable, like showing your business partner his rivals sitting in a cage. Then Leon brought Simba to the meeting room. Leon had prepared their contract days earlier because he expected Simba to accept. You must provide the wolf tribe with enough meat. Everyone living in Red Moon Territory will eat meat. Turns out the old wolf had dreamed of getting his people officially recognized by the Empire for ages. That's why Simba hid his entire tribe in this cursed wasteland. And now they couldn't even find food. Signing this contract looked like selling out his people on the surface. But Simba was actually buying his children a future. Under their combined management, the wolf tribe is going to thrive. Speaking of which, how will you explain all this to your people? Simba promised to make every werewolf obey Red Moon Territory's laws. Leon walked over to the map on his wall and circled an area with his pen. That's the village closest to your manor, and it has real farmland with actual wheat growing in it. Leon said it casually, like giving away prime real estate to wolves was the most normal thing in the world. Simba stared at him like Leon just handed him the deed to paradise. Consider this an investment in your future. From that day forward, Wolf King Simba pledged eternal service to Leon as his lord. Select your best warriors and form a Wolf Knight order. When Simba was young, before the curse turned him into a werewolf, he dreamed of being a knight. Now Leon was handing it back to him decades later in a rundown manor in the worst territory in the empire. A knight order meant Simba's inner circle got official titles, felt closer to human society, and developed a sense of belonging. Wolves who didn't make the cut for the knight order could join the logistics team, farming, building, general labor. Red Moon territory achieving self-sufficiency was no longer a fantasy. A 50-year-old wolf king sobbing over a wagon of cow meat. The moment Simba's cart disappeared over the horizon, Bess started his favorite hobby, complaining about money. Bess could not understand why Leon had accepted the wolves instead of selling them for bounty money, but Bess had learned to keep his mouth shut over these past weeks. He'd watched him make decision after decision that seemed insane at first, and then worked out perfectly. Plus, no more worrying about werewolf attacks during every trip outside. That was when they had 5 people. Now they were feeding an entire knight order, a wolf tribe, and a dungeon full of crusader prisoners who have been eating their food for 7 days with 0 ransom payment. Maybe something happened in Radiant Fire territory, Leon said, rubbing his chin. Unfortunately, they were so isolated out here, they could not even buy a newspaper. The Peach and owner in 4-leaf territory should know something. Leon still felt slightly awkward about One Eye's romantic situation, but business was business. Red Moon territory was a construction zone. That evening, 2 speeches were happening at the same time in 2 different locations, and Leon swore they were cosmically synchronized. Simba was telling his wolves they'd never go hungry again, that they were officially recognized citizens, that no adventurer would ever hunt them for bounty money. Leon even pitched it as a business opportunity. Eyes lit up around the room. Simba described the beautiful village Leon had offered his tribe. See? When Leon was interrogating Carl with wolf mint, the drooling idiot confessed everything. It was because he discovered a gold mine hidden underneath the old stone village. This also made him suspicious about why the Radiant Fire Crusaders were really snooping around Red Moon territory. Maybe the Wolf Heart's story was just a cover, and they were actually after the gold, too. Meanwhile, Leon sent One Eye partner to the Peachin to dig up intelligence on what was really happening in Radiant Fire territory. He told his wolves about the Wolf Knight Order, how their strongest warriors could become actual knights. Wolves could fight alongside their knights for dangerous missions. He told his people that anyone who broke Red Moon territory's laws would be punished according to those laws, not tribal customs. The Red Moon affects their minds and makes them irrational, so clear laws were essential. Simba, what exactly are the laws of Red Moon territory? At the exact same moment, in 2 different locations, Simba and Leon both went silent. With 145 werewolves about to move in, Leon could not just wing it anymore. Leon had delayed writing laws while fighting necromancers, negotiating with wolf kings, capturing crusaders, and playing a haunted flute. He'd promised his people would follow laws he hadn't even read, though based on how Leon treated them so far, he figured Leon probably wouldn't do something that crazy. His adventurers daydreamed about gold nuggets. Their war loot from the big battle got sold in 4-leaf territory and converted into supplies. Leon desperately wanted rice, but the druid didn't sell rice seeds. Leon bought a coop full of chickens, 10 pigs, 20 sheep, 30 cattle, and 20 horses. Everything else went to their brand new livestock farm managed by the logistics team. This was starting to feel like a real territory. Farms, livestock, residents. You can't have werewolves and undead monsters roaming around without a nice thick wall between civilization and chaos. His adventurers weren't technically new anymore, so the construction duty fell squarely on Simba's wolves. But since they were the ones living inside the walls, they were basically building their own home security system. While the wolves were stacking stones and building watchtowers, aiming skeleton scouts came back from exploring the old stone village. Good news! The gold mine was real, sitting right under a dried-up well in the old wolf settlement. A mysterious underground race had claimed the mine as their own. His skeletons basically walked into someone else's living room and found out the treasure had landlords. Every single good thing in this cursed place has a catch attached to it. Leon sat down, rubbed his temples, and wondered what species Leon would have to negotiate with next. While Leon was busy playing farmer and building his little werewolf paradise, interesting things were happening in Radiant Fire territory. His polite ransom letter arrived at the Radiant Fire Manor, where it was read aloud by a trained yellowbird, not a messenger. The guy listening was David Bett, James Bett's third son, who had recently done something very Game of Thrones. David had his own contract which named Tina, a redhead with a fiery personality, literally fiery. David just waved them off like this happened every Tuesday. "Next time you provoke him," Tina said coldly. Tina wanted to become the Empire's chief witch, and David promised to help her get there. A psychopath aristocrat with daddy issues and a fire witch who could burn down buildings wanted his land. But let's just say the new Radiant Fire Lords made his dead father look like a saint by comparison. Meanwhile, back in his territory, Leon was completely unaware of any dramatic villain monologues happening about him. Peter and his 20 knights had the worst road trip of their lives getting to Red Moon territory. Then they looked up and saw werewolves building walls. Leon could only imagine their faces. And now they were staring at a village full of werewolves casually doing construction work alongside skeleton soldiers. Then Abing came galloping in on his ghost horse, sword drawn, eyes burning with purple fire, clearly planning to introduce his signature chrysanthemum pierce technique to some new victims. Leon scrambled up the watchtower just in time. There from Radiant Fire territory, Leon smacked one eye on the head. "You scared their guests half to death." Leon made a mental note that a one-eyed man was probably not ideal for watchtower duty. Leon already knew what was happening in Radiant Fire territory, thanks to the Peach and Z's intel. The bloody coup, David killing his father and brothers, the whole mess. What mattered to him was whether this new lord was going to be a problem or a customer. Peter and his knights were escorted through the village by obeying, and their jaws did not close the entire walk. When Peter finally walked into his manor and saw him, Leon could read his thoughts on his face like a billboard. Leon had spent the entire morning planting corn and never expected the delegation to arrive early. But then his eyes drifted to Lucy standing beside him, and his brain briefly short-circuited. Leon could see the question forming behind his eyes. Leon smiled warmly, spread his muddy arms wide, and welcomed his guests to the most confusing territory in the entire empire. Peter came to Red Moon territory with 2 missions: deliver ransom money and spy on his operation. Leon knew Leon did not look like your typical Western aristocrat. When Leon smiled, Leon apparently looked harmless, which is both an advantage and an insult. The Red Moon's permanent cloud cover had actually improved his complexion, though. His knights brought in chests of gold coins and popped the lids open. Peter had sided with David Bett during the coup and gotten promoted to captain as a reward. The notification literally said, "A past not known to others." His first thought was that Vessi had stolen his girlfriend, or something equally dramatic. If those two had beef, maybe Leon could keep Vessi instead of releasing him. Vessi was apparently talented at the night arts, and Leon was still pathetically weak. Leon was the weakest person in his own territory, and that needed to change. Leon had spent every coin they had on supplies recently, which had given the old man chest pains. 1 5-star knight at 5,000, 10 4-star knights at 2,000 each, 40-star knights at 500 each. Peter and his knights looked stunned, but Bess did not care about their feelings. Leon waved his hand generously. Leon needed to step away briefly. Aurora followed him like a shadow because she hated social situations with strangers. Leon hated them too, but for different reasons. The dungeon, while Red Moon watched carefully. But first, Leon wanted to have a little chat with their friend Vessi. Down in the dungeon, the Crusaders had been having the worst vacation of their lives. "Wolf Lord, how dare you show your face down here? Their lord will flatten this entire territory. You should burn on a stake like the rest of the Edwards. Let them out." While Red Moon watched carefully, Leon let them scream for about 30 seconds. They settled for glaring at him with maximum hatred, which honestly, Leon found more comfortable than the yelling. Vessi stayed quiet through all of it. If everything was normal, the old captain would have rescued them weeks ago. "Do you know Peter?" While Red Moon watched carefully, "He is the new captain of your knight order." Peter was not even vice captain. Leon leaned against the wall, arms crossed, half his face in lamplight and half in shadow. He brought the ransom and introduced himself as captain. "While you were all in here building walls, Radiant Fire territory changed ownership. The nights erupted into chaotic discussion. Denial, confusion, anger, more denial. Leon just stood there and waited. The dungeon went quiet again. But this time, it was the heavy silence of people whose entire world had just shifted beneath their feet. Leon warned the prisoners that David's new leadership would not treat inherited soldiers kindly. A lord who murders his own father and brothers is not exactly known for treating inherited soldiers kindly. Peter paid the ransom, and the moment he saw Vesey, his eyes practically glowed with smug satisfaction. Two kids from the Seam village who became knights. Peter had been chewing on that jealousy for years like it was his only meal. If the captain had not personally brought the ransom, you would all be sold as slaves. Peter tilted his chin up at Vesey like a rooster who just learned to crow. Died of illness. Gave him the position. Meanwhile, his eyes were drinking in every detail of Vesey's appearance. His former rival looked like a homeless man after a bar fight, and Peter was savoring every second of it. The old captain was a 6-star knight. Leon was too far away to hear the exact words, but from context and his earlier intel, Leon could guess. Something designed to detonate Vesey's last shred of composure. Peter threw a punch into Vesey's stomach that doubled him over and dropped him to the floor. Leon had been training every day for this moment. Vesey, now Leon was above you in rank, above you in strength. Aurora tugged his sleeve, while Red Moon watched carefully. This is their internal business, not their jurisdiction, and Leon swore he almost cried from happiness that they agreed on something for once. Also, when sad. Also, when breathing. Lucy was standing nearby, peeling an apple with a knife. Abing sat in the corner, gnawing a bone that had been licked clean hours ago. He did not care about human drama. A money-obsessed butler, a murder nun slicing invisible enemies, a skeleton eating nothing, and a tiny witch asking him about workplace ethics. What did you say? While Red Moon watched carefully. Peter's group left the manor and walked into the wolf village. Leon stretched, yawned, and suggested they go drink tea. You had good tea this whole time. He would never have cracked it open if not for 75,000 gold coins sitting in their vault. About 1 cup of tea. Best did not understand what they were talking about. 1 for him, 1 for Aurora. Aurora used hers as a hand warmer. They walked into the wolf village and found exactly what Leon expected. Vesey had Peter pinned to the ground and was rearranging his face with his fists. Leon pushed through the crowd of spectating wolves, humiliated and furious. He screamed at every knight present to attack Vesey immediately or face charges when they returned home. Slowly, reluctantly, dozens of swords surrounded Vesey from every direction. This was the moment Leon had been waiting for. Leon grabbed a young wolf cub who was standing nearby, watching the show with wide, excited eyes. Every knight froze, staring at the crying wolf child who had appeared out of nowhere. The Radiant Fire Crusaders have violated Red Moon Territory's second law. They had been watching this drama unfold with growing irritation, and now they had legal permission to participate. Lucy stopped carving her apple core and looked genuinely cheerful for the first time all day. Because Leon threw a child into a sword fight and called it a law violation. Was it dirty? While Red Moon watched carefully, Leon literally wrote the law 10 seconds ago. That ransom money was already mine, and now Leon had 50+ prisoners to squeeze again. Then his hand touched his money pouch, and admiration won decisively. His hunting squad rounded up every single Crusader knight like sheep at a rodeo. They paid the ransom. While Red Moon watched carefully, they were the Radiant Fire Crusaders. You are very noisy for someone who just broke the law. Aurora chimed in, arms crossed, pointing at the wolf cub beside her. The wolf cub was nearly 6 feet tall and weighed over 200 adlabi. Clutching his slightly scratched arm and wailing like an oversized baby, they could smell it. But what were they going to do about it? Bess came running out of the manor when he heard the commotion. Sir, what happened? While Red Moon watched carefully, Leon was writing another ransom letter. Bess's worry evaporated like morning dew. He practically sprinted back inside to fetch writing supplies, trembling with excitement at the thought of more gold coins. They thought Leon was poking a sleeping dragon with a very short stick. Without hesitation, the old wolf extended his left arm, which swelled into a massive muscular limb the size of a tree trunk. No outsider may harm a resident of Red Moon Territory for any unjust reason, even if the attacker is the mighty Radiant Fire Crusaders. Even if they are nobility, they could not hurt their people. Their new human lord had just stood up against a powerful neighboring territory to protect a wolf child. Now, a few sharp-eyed wolf warriors definitely saw that Leon was the one who threw the cub into the crowd of swords, but they kept their mouth shut. Simba had been building walls and missed the whole incident. This old wolf had been living in permanent gratitude mode lately. The cub stopped crying after Aurora comforted him. Wolf healing fixed it in seconds. Fessy did not go back to the dungeon. Instead, he knelt before him and swore loyalty to Red Moon territory. The female ranger, Doris, stepped aside without complaint because she understood math. Everyone except Peter, who is now sitting in his dungeon, realizing he had been completely played from the beginning. Fessy and Leon had coordinated the whole thing. Create a legal excuse. While Red Moon watched carefully, Peter swore he would tell David everything when he got back to Radiant Fire territory. Fessy was not going back to Radiant Fire territory anyway. That evening, Leon had dinner with his leadership team. Aurora sat to his left, eating enough for 3 people as usual. Fessy drank wine quietly, looking more relaxed than Leon had ever seen him. Perhaps you should not have antagonized Radiant Fire territory just for his sake. Even without that, he wants the gold mine in their territory. David wanted Red Moon territory's resources. Leon could gravel and delay, or Leon could build strength and prepare. This wolf cries more than the cub Leon threw into a sword fight. David was James Bett's illegitimate third son, always treated like garbage by his family. The witch used fire magic. A fire witch, Aurora repeated, blinking with curiosity rather than concern. Red Moon territory has great environment. This place has good environment, Leon smiled. They would understand eventually, or they would keep thinking Leon was crazy. Red Moon territory has fierce werewolf guards, endless corrupted monsters acting as a natural barrier, and now a gold mine. Leon had just turned every single disadvantage of Red Moon territory into a strategic asset. Apart from being completely uninhabitable for normal humans, he has a point. Leon could say the sky is purple, and he would nod as long as nobody threatened his bone supply. They just need to herd the monsters into the border zone between them and Radiant Fire territory, and they become their free security system. To control that many corrupted monsters, you would need to hire a top-tier necromancer, and your skeleton knight killed him. Who said they need a necromancer? Aurora pointed at herself, cheeks turning pink. What are corrupted monsters most afraid of? Push every single monster toward the Radiant Fire border and let them become someone else's headache. Aurora's eyes sparkled, and she pumped her tiny fist. At this point, Leon thought nodding is just his idle animation. But Fessy raised a valid concern. And the moment Aurora stops patrolling, they will flood right back into their heartland. Fessy, who had killed a man over his stolen wife just hours earlier, suddenly looked peaceful, staring at her golden hair, catching the lamplight. He and the werewolves both hated those things, which reminded him of something Leon had been planning. Speaking of sun lamps, Leon was scheduling mandatory sunlight resistance training for all undead and werewolf personnel. 1 hour per day until you build immunity. Leon could already hear the complaints, but tough love builds tough employees. Their current supply barely covers the village they had already cleared. Then request free supplies from the church organization. Free military-grade defensive equipment, courtesy of organized religion. And together they were covering gaps Leon could never fill alone. From now on, monsters will only exist in 4 designated zones here along the Radiant Fire border. Leon labeled them Monster Zones 1 through 4. Abing assists her. While Red Moon watched carefully, Leon needed a complete map of Radiant Fire territory. Every defensive structure, every wall layout, every strategic position. Leon could draw from memory, but it will not be perfectly accurate. Could have grabbed the maps first. Sir, why do you need their military layouts? They could not just sit here waiting to get invaded with zero preparation. Leon also needs you to identify trustworthy knights among the prisoners. Best looked like Leon had just threatened to throw gold coins into a river. Then let them move everyone for the defense and future of Red Moon territory. Abing shoved his bone inside his ribcage and stood at attention with the most serious expression a faceless skull can produce. The wolf village was right next to the manor now, and apparently it was werewolf bedtime. Leon rubbed his forehead, while Red Moon watched carefully. And for the love of everything holy, keep them away from the wheat fields. While David Bett was busy holding a funeral for the father he personally strangled, Leon was getting dressed for the most important acting role of his career. Leon put on the cheekabest clothes Leon owned, caked his boots in mud, and practiced looking terrified in the mirror. Aurora wore a plain linen dress with braided pigtails and smeared dirt on her face. Exactly the reaction Leon wanted when Leon entered the study and saw David Betts sitting on his throne. The entire room burst out laughing. That place barely has anyone at all. Leon had his pride, buried deep under 3 layers of fake humility. Aurora stood behind him with her head down, silent as a statue, probably because he spent years being the pathetic underdog himself before murdering his way to the top. Leon had figured out how his hidden information ability worked by now. 10 prompts, maximum per target. Quality completely random. While Red Moon watched carefully. First prompt, he looks like an ordinary lord. Third prompt, he left his own father's funeral early because he does not care. Already knew that. While Red Moon watched carefully, born from James Bett and an elf slave woman, same as Lucy, who was also half-elf and could fight between 4 and 5-star knight level despite being a swordswoman, not a trained knight. Fifth prompt, he contracted with Fire Witch Tina and was fully supporting her second awakening. Sixth prompt, he recently killed his father and 3 brothers to become lord. He rebuilt the Radiant Fire military, hired expensive mages, and upgraded their magic cannon fortifications. His own mother was an elf slave, so he tortures women who look like his mother. Leon was not a therapist, but that is extremely messed up. Please, universe, tell him Leon did not look like a pretty boy. Leon was a muddy farmer in cheap clothes sitting on the floor. The lord of a territory neighboring the permanently dark Red Moon territory was afraid of darkness. Mixed results, but several gold nuggets. Leon pulled the letter from inside his shirt with trembling hands, making a big show of proving it was sealed and undamaged. Leon cleared his throat, unfolded the letter, and began reading in his most nervous, squeaky voice. May Radiant Fire territory prosper in good health. Leon had received your generous ransom and hosted your knights with great hospitality before releasing Vice Captain Vesey and all personnel. Upon release, the 2 parties engaged in violent combat throughout Red Moon Territory's bustling commercial district. The child was a 6-foot werewolf cub with a paper cut that healed in 30 seconds. The buildings were already half destroyed before any of this happened. As Lord, Leon was forced to rearrest all knights for violating Red Moon Territory law. 2 5-star knights at 5,000 each, 15 4-star knights at 2,000 each, 55 the 3-star knights at 500 each. Grand total 70,000 gold coins. Please include that as well. Every noble in that study was staring at him like Leon had just read a declaration of war disguised as an invoice. Nearly 150,000 total. Extracted from Radiant Fire territory by 1 farmer lord with a skeleton knight and a very creative interpretation of property law. And Leon was very, very good at profiting from other people's mistakes. The smaller Leon looked, the less anyone would suspect Leon was the actual lord who wrote that letter. Then the room exploded. While Red Moon watched carefully, all that gold and it's not enough. He was extra angry because, fun fact, Leon noticed the 200 missing coins from last time were definitely skimmed by him. This is an insult to all of Radiant Fire territory. 70,000 more gold coins. That fallen noble walked in with a witch, an old butler, and 1 skeleton. Erase Red Moon territory from the map. It used to be theirs anyway. The threat against the messengers gave Leon 1 moment of genuine fear beneath his disguise. A map from Vesey's memory was useful, but nothing beats boots on the ground intelligence. Leon had already confirmed that Fire Witch Tina was not present. That was precisely why Leon had burned all 10 of his information scans on David Bett instead of saving any for later. And he just drank expensive tea. He was half-elf born from James Bett and an elf slave woman. Radiant Fire territory was stronger than ever. At which point, Leon broke Leon contact so fast, Leon nearly gave himself whiplash. Leon was covered in mud sitting on a floor. He was afraid of the dark. The lord of the territory next to permanently dark Red Moon territory was scared of darkness. Leon threw his hands over his head and begged. They were forced to go to Red Moon territory. Totally forced. While Red Moon watched carefully, anything you want. While Red Moon watched carefully, Leon looked them dead in the eyes. Their faces lit up with vindicated fury. Baron Edward made it all up to squeeze more money out of you. Leon knew that letter was lies. A little girl with big eyes and a dirty face telling secrets. Aurora lifted her innocent face and delivered her lines with the dumb sincerity of a kid who has no idea what she is saying. They do not have real knights, but they secretly borrowed 20,000 soldiers from Four-Leaf territory through some kind of cooperation agreement. She stared up at them with those crystal-clear, stupid eyes, and the ministers ate it up like candy. They immediately assumed Four-Leaf territory was cooperating with him because of the gold mine. Leon was slightly disappointed Leon did not see Fire Witch Tina, but the mission accomplished its real goal, buying time. He might send scouts, but his wolf patrols and monster buffer zones would catch them. The werewolves, knowing Leon had antagonized Radiant Fire to protect them, worked like machines possessed. Every single wolf was a model employee. He gave them homes, jobs, and 3 meat meals a day for their shared homeland. The adventurers felt embarrassed watching werewolves outwork them, so they started competing. An unstoppable hustle culture swept through Red Moon territory entirely by accident. Nobody wanted to be the lazy one when an enemy army might show up any day. Leon had ordered a sun church for Lucy, which would let them request free sun lamps, holy salt, and demon stones from the religious organization. So while his construction crew was building Lucy's church, they quietly built a moon church right next to it. Lucy left for Four-Leaf territory with One Eye to file the church paperwork and request supplies. Leon gave One Eye a bonus mission: visit his girlfriend at the Peach Inn and bring back intelligence. His little witch was finally being used as a strategic weapon instead of a cute mascot. So David's spies would report back that the fake alliance Aurora invented was real, a genuine power built by a skeleton who stabs people in the rear. Vesey came to him one morning, looking like a man who had solved the meaning of life. Leon had just finished training and was covered in sweat, dreaming about a hot bath, a sewer map, while Red Moon watched carefully. Radiant Fire territory is a fortress. The southern rainy season is so long that they built massive underground tunnels for drainage. But if you can think of it, David bet too. Vesey explained that even as a neglected, illegitimate son, David had still been raised inside a noble manor. You cannot defend against something you have never imagined. Then he asked him something carefully, like he was testing a landmine with his toe. Even in a territory full of monsters, skeletons, and wolves, asking a nobleman to recruit sewer vagrants was apparently still a bold request. If that is your plan, Leon fully support it. Red Moon territory is your foundation. You genuinely do not look down on homeless people? Back where Leon came from, those phrases were thousands of years old. He repeated them quietly to himself, and Leon watched something shift behind his eyes. Vesey's loyalty had reached a new peak, not because he had nowhere else to go, but because he genuinely believed in what Leon was building. Leon told Vesey to draft a detailed plan, and they would review it together. Leon was good at strategy, but local knowledge was irreplaceable. Leon was running a startup, and Vesey just became his head of special operations. David Bett had just murdered his way through a coup, which meant he had killed plenty of soldiers in the process. His army was depleted, and he knew Red Moon territory was growing stronger. But sir, if their monster barrier plan works, it will not matter how many soldiers he sends. Aurora and Abing were already herding corrupted creatures toward the border zones. Leon already talked to Lord Royce in Four-Leaf territory about this, Leon said casually. Any family in Radiant Fire territory that does not want their 14-year-old son drafted into a suicide army can pack up and move to Four-Leaf territory instead. New ruler, bloody takeover, depleted forces. What Leon did not tell One Eye was the beautiful chain reaction Leon had set up. By visiting Roy for tea every few days, Leon created the appearance of a close alliance between Red Moon and Four-Leaf territory. He mentioned mineral resources, hinted at partnership, and tried to peel Royce away from his supposed alliance. This pushed relations between Radiant Fire and Four-Leaf to freezing point. David got suspicious enough to accelerate military preparations, and both of them thought they understood the situation perfectly. Simon, that Leon Edward fellow, keeps coming here for tea. Does he already know about the silver mine? His rejection letter had destroyed any chance of diplomatic resolution, and every cup of tea Leon drank in his parlor was another nail in the coffin of David's patience. Two of them thought they were making independent decisions. Best would be furious if he knew Leon was wasting good tea leaves on political theater. But some investments pay dividends you cannot count in gold coins. David was paranoid that Royce and Leon were secretly allied over his gold mine. But good things never last, and intelligence reports confirmed what Leon already expected. Fire, which Tina completed her second awakening. David also discovered through the black market that his messengers had lied. Red Moon territory did not have thousands of adventurers or tens of thousands of borrowed soldiers. The angry young lord wanted payback, and he wanted gold. Democracy is efficient when everyone agrees on violence. Morning fog draped across the landscape as sunlight glinted off thousands of armored soldiers. Beside him, Tina rode in a luxury war chariot with blue flames coiling above her like a serpent. They marched toward Red Moon territory. This was one of his proudest creations. Leon had Aurora and Abing kill hundreds of corrupted monsters and bury their corpses in specific locations along the border. Sun lamps could not fix it. Horses panicked and sank. The magnificent army ground to a complete halt at the doorstep of a swamp made from monster corpses. David pulled his forces back to safe distance. The sound thundered across the entire territory like a bomb had detonated, which was exactly the point. His territory was so vast that watchtowers could not see the borders, but they could hear an explosion designed to be as loud as physically possible. Within minutes, Red Moon territory transformed from a peaceful farming village into a war machine. Even the logistics team came running out with farming hoes and rolling pins. Leon climbed to the highest point of the castle, which Leon had officially named Red Moon Fortress. The army marching toward them was the strongest military force in the southern border region, led by a psychopath lord and a mid-tier fire witch. They belonged to Red Moon territory, whether they liked it or not. If Red Moon fell, they would become bounty targets hunted by every adventurer guild in the Empire. Vesey and his knights were traitors to Radiant Fire, surrendering mint execution. Nobody had anywhere else to go. Leon took a deep breath and shouted so everyone could hear. But if they survived this attack, they would have truly earned their place in Red Moon territory. Wolves. Leon needed your sharpest claws and strongest jaws to crush their knights' throats. Knights. Leon needed your spears and swords to shatter their shields. Your only job is to survive this battle. They throw these invaders out of their territory. If you fall in battle, your family gets 20 gold coins. If you survive, you get 200. Everyone will just hide. While Red Moon watched carefully, Bess went pale as the truth sank in. Every person in this territory was fighting for survival, not glory. The chant echoed off the fortress walls, bouncing across wheat fields and wolf villages and skeleton patrol routes, carried by voices that shook with fear but refused to break. Skeleton soldiers stood motionless because they have no emotions. War had arrived at Red Moon territory. The war between Red Moon territory and Radiant Fire territory officially began. Abing had gone from a cowardly little skeleton to a peak-level phantom knight. He could transform his entire skeleton into bone armor and weapons. A 360-degree attack, targeting the weakest sphincter muscle of any opponent. Did he deserve the title Swordmaster? This skeleton was destined to become an undead emperor someday. His future emperor fought like a timid assassin who exclusively targeted rear ends. She carried him through every battle, and her light magic naturally suppressed undead creatures, which gave Abing a permanent inferiority complex. She could now maintain her adult combat form for 2 full hours instead of 30 minutes, a 4 times improvement. The problem was, her next awakening required 100 awakening stones, and border market prices had been inflated to 5,000 gold coins each. Simba could not really get much stronger, but his real value was commanding a werewolf army that became unstoppable under the Red Moon. Vesey was technically his weakest leader now, but his brain was the most valuable weapon in his arsenal. Tina refused to waste magic clearing the path. The remaining army pushed through forests and barren plains, arriving at Red Moon Fortress right before sunset. Thousands of armored soldiers in perfect formation, battle-hardened cavalry, siege equipment dragged through monster territory just to reach his doorstep. Peter's head mounted on the wall alongside the heads of every Crusader knight who had refused to surrender when given the chance. Vesey gripped his sword and stared down at the army he once served. Over 100 wolf warriors drew their curved blades simultaneously, producing a metallic chorus that echoed off the stone walls. The first poisoned arrow slammed into their iron-reinforced gate, and everything exploded into chaos. Heavy infantry shields crashed against their walls, throwing sparks into the darkening sky. A battering ram wrapped in sulfur smoke hammered their main gate with earth-shaking impacts. Two waves of fighters smashing together, turning the ground into a river of blood and broken steel, red hair flying in the wind like actual flames. She sent the firewall rolling toward his forces like a tsunami made of pure heat. Fire Witch Tina had entered the battlefield. Leon watched the fire approach his soldiers and thought one very calm, very measured thought. They really need you right now. Aurora threw up a light shield just in time to block Tina's first fire attack. Tina smiled like she had found a new toy. Aurora launched holy light orbs at Tina like glowing bowling balls of destruction. They detonated one after another with deafening explosions, but Tina raised a wall of blue flame that absorbed every single blast. One beautiful arc of her blade left a thin crack across Tina's fancy armor, a tiny wound, but Tina felt it. She conjured a fire whip woven from red and blue flames and shattered Lucy's light shield in one crack. Then she teleported directly in front of Lucy and bloomed a fire lotus beneath her feet. Then Aurora appeared in a flash of blinding light, layering shield after shield over Lucy's body. Pushing back the fire lotus with pure stubbornness, Lucy slashed through the flames, cut an opening, and escaped through the closing petals. The Wolf Knights transformed under the red moon into their strongest forms and tore through the Crusader lines like furry wrecking balls. His Fire Knights raised flame shields and formed burning formations against the wolves. Then David's adjutant said something interesting. They see the witch, the wolves, the traitor Vesey. They would find him when they break through. That was his biggest mistake, because Leon was not in the castle. While every Leon was focused on the fireworks at Red Moon Fortress, Abing and Leon had slipped away hours earlier. Vesey's recruits, escaped slaves, desperate refugees, people who had fallen through every crack society had to offer. They can really follow you and become real citizens. You will never be homeless again. Vesey had wisely neglected to mention that following meant moving to Red Moon territory, the most cursed place on the continent. If they knew that detail, they would have chosen the sewer. David had never imagined anyone would attack through his drainage system because David had never set foot in a sewer. Class blindness was his fatal weakness, and Vesey had called it perfectly. David had marched his entire army to Red Moon territory, leaving behind a skeleton garrison. The homeless crew ran through the streets, screaming. Panic spread like a grease fire. Abing and Leon charged straight into the Lord's manor. With most guards deployed to Red Moon territory, the resistance was pathetic. Meanwhile, back at Red Moon Fortress, things were going exactly as planned, which meant they looked terrible. Aurora, Lucy, Vesey, Simba, all bleeding, exhausted, running on fumes. Aurora gritted her teeth and fired one last purification blast. She ran because Leon taught her the most important lesson in combat. Pride is worthless if you are dead. But the wolves were already hiding in underground shelters Leon had built for exactly this scenario. It is a trap. While Red Moon watched carefully, he ran. While Red Moon watched carefully, then a rider burst onto the battlefield. The silence that followed was the most satisfying sound Leon had ever not heard, because Leon was sitting in David's personal chair, in David's personal study, drinking David's personal expensive Highland red tea, petting David's personal decorative bird, surrounded by David's personal captured nobles. While he was busy knocking on his front door, Leon walked in through his toilet. Leon Edward has captured Radiant Fire territory with an undead army. Leon was not there to see it personally, but Leon could imagine it perfectly based on what happened next. How could he breach their defenses? Sir, they searched the entire Red Moon Castle. David wanted his gold mine, but he was not willing to trade his entire territory for it. Red Moon territory was worthless without workers, and all his workers lived in Radiant Fire territory. Aurora ran away the moment she could because Leon trained her well. The Radiant Fire army marched home at maximum speed, furious and exhausted, ready to reclaim their city. They were the Radiant Fire army. Their lord is Lady Elisha now. Elisha, David's sister, the one he kept alive because he thought women were harmless political pawns. While Leon was raiding the treasury and kidnapping nobles, Leon also freed all from house arrest and helped her take control. Leon should have snapped her neck when Leon had the chance, or at least killed them more thoroughly. David asked Tina if she could destroy the 4 defense towers. Overusing magic in her condition could cause a dangerous backlash. They had fought werewolves all night, marched for hours, and now faced their own fortifications manned by a garrison that had been resting comfortably the entire time. David was about to agree, when someone on the city walls shouted something that changed everything. You do not belong in Radiant Fire territory. Leon may have coached someone to say that. David's eyes filled with blood. Tina had no choice but to squeeze out whatever magic she had left, risking serious damage to herself. The garrison went from 2,000 to 200. Radiant Fire territory's total military strength was now 1,000 soldiers, most of them injured. The treasury was, "Sir, the treasury has been emptied." David's blood pressure probably broke some kind of medical record. The servant looked like he was about to cry. Leon left David an empty treasury, an empty council chamber, and an empty feeling in his chest. He would need at least a year to recover, and that was optimistic. Back in Red Moon territory, Leon called a meeting with all his surviving leaders. The Red Moon Knights were down to just one eye, Red Boots, and the female ranger. They won. Radiant Fire cannot attack them again for at least a year. Abeing skeleton soldiers marched in, carrying chest after chest after chest. Bess rubbed his eyes, then rubbed them again, then a third time. This was enough money to build 20 Red Moon territories. The adventurers stared like children seeing snow for the first time. "Sir, you actually did it." They were actually rich. While Red Moon watched carefully, Leon wanted to tell them to stop because Leon was tired and sore and had just ridden through a sewer 12 hours ago. So Leon let them launch him toward the ceiling a few times like a human celebration ball. He was too busy hugging a chest of gold coins like it was his firstborn child. Lucy smiled and started planning the menu. Abing did his signature hip wiggle dance, and for once, nobody laughed at him. Not bad for a farmer lord. A hungry witch, a rear-striking skeleton, a psycho nun, an emotional werewolf, a vengeful knight, and the world's cheapest butler. Leon set aside a proper burial ground for every warrior who fell defending Red Moon territory. No separation. While Red Moon watched carefully, Leon hired construction crews from Four Leaf territory and rebuilt everything David destroyed. Red Moon territory finally had a real city. Fessy and the human residents moved into Central Street, but Radiant Fire was not exactly welcoming them back. So they accepted 50 gold coins each and started unpacking. Leon sent an invitation to Lord Royce in Four Leaf territory. Translation: he was terrified of getting involved with anything connected to him. Red velvet tablecloths, silver cutlery gleaming under candlelight, waiters and Vess carrying trays of gourmet food and wine. Bess would have been fully satisfied if not for the werewolves attending in their strange outfits. Everyone is present. Leon straightened his brand new formal suit and walked into the banquet hall, all currently being physically held in their chairs by his knights. Leon sat at the head of the table, 2 tiny bodyguards who could destroy everyone in this room without breaking a sweat. Leon was Leon Edward, Lord of Red Moon territory, and here was the last surviving member, smiling at them from across a table full of expensive wine. They were nobles, while Red Moon watched carefully. "Just let them go, Lord Edward." Every knight in the room drew their swords simultaneously. "Ladies and gentlemen, Leon invited you here to celebrate their victory and the rebirth of Red Moon territory." Leon was not letting them leave. One brave old nobleman stood up. Leon swirled his wine glass slowly. "So, in your opinion, Radiant Fire and Red Moon are separate territories. Radiant Fire territory attacked Red Moon territory without legal justification. Your army destroyed their walls, their castle, and killed their residents. But you all supported him. Did you not? When he announced conscription, he asked nobles for donations. Under Red Moon territory's third law, conspiracy to wage war carries a sentence of life imprisonment. But Leon could absolutely invent local laws, exploit legal loopholes, and threaten to keep them locked up forever in a territory full of wolves and monsters. The nobility's collective courage collapsed like a sandcastle in a tsunami. You must compensate Red Moon territory for their losses. His total population before the war was maybe 300 if you counted the skeleton soldiers and were generous with the word elite. They exchanged skeptical glances. 3,000 elites in Red Moon territory, gold, livestock, and most importantly, slaves. These people had no idea yet that Red Moon territory was actually a decent place to live now. Fessy appeared beside him, face serious and ready. The next chapter of Red Moon territory was about to begin. The red moonlight was not helping the mood. Every distant growl made someone flinch, whimper, or drop to their knees, begging the sun god for salvation. Leon did not want to die here. Actually, Leon had asked for 3,000 elite workers. Some of these people were farmers, grandmothers, and teenagers who had never committed a crime in their lives. Quality control was non-existent. While Red Moon watched carefully, Simba roared once, and the entire square went silent instantly. Leon walked up to the speaking platform Leon had built specifically for moments like this. Aurora and Lucy flanked him as bodyguards, because embarrassingly Leon was still the weakest person in his own territory. A determined house cat could probably take him in a fair fight. 2 months ago, they fought a war against Radiant Fire territory. They expected to be worked to death in monster-infested mines or used as bait for corrupted creatures. Aurora had been sold as a slave once. 2. Lucy stood expressionless because she was Lucy, and emotions were not her specialty. From the moment you entered Red Moon territory, you belong here. You believe Red Moon territory is hell. You think the Red Moon itself will corrupt your bodies. Human prejudice is truly a mountain. The werewolves of Red Moon territory do not eat humans. Every wolf knight raised their weapon and shouted his name. These wolves were disciplined soldiers, not wild animals. Everywhere else in this empire, those brands define your entire existence. Work for him for 5 years. 5 years after that, your slave documents will be destroyed. A tidal wave of shock and disbelief crashing through the crowd. 5 years, and they were free. Is that real? While Red Moon watched carefully, even if it is dangerous. Freedom is freedom. A muscular slave swore he would do anything if Leon's promise of freedom was real. Leon let that word land, then continued stacking promises like bricks. Your children will be born free, not slaves. In the Silver Moon Empire, slave children were automatically slaves forever. You may learn to read and write. You may choose your own work. Mining, farming, weaving, logistics, whatever matches your skills. After 5 years, you may take examinations to become civil servants or even knights. Every single right Leon listed was something the Empire explicitly denied to slaves. Leon was telling 3,000 tools that they were people. Some were too young, too old, or too overwhelmed. Different tiers this time. While Red Moon watched carefully, help him build Red Moon territory into the safest, most prosperous, most powerful domain in this world. Leon personally thought Leon looked like a tired farmer in a fancy suit. Lord Li Nen forever. While Red Moon watched carefully, slaves screamed with joy. 3,000 people who had arrived expecting death were now pledging their futures to a territory they had feared 10 minutes ago. Leon stepped down from the platform and muttered to himself, "That speech was pretty good." Aurora nodded. Leon was eating jerky. While Red Moon watched carefully, she did not mind that Leon still had not collected enough awakening stones for her second evolution. She was looking at 3,000 humans the way a cat looks at a room full of mice. Official residence. While Red Moon watched carefully, Leon handed the organizational nightmare to Vessi, who had been promoted from guard captain to Red Moon Night Order captain. Although peak authority over 50 people was like being king of a very small hill. Out of 3,000, Vessi squeezed 1,000 into the guard corps. 500 went to Simba for the mining expedition team. The women went to Moonlight Street and got assigned textile work. To boost productivity, Leon opened Red Moon Territory's first textile factory. Women spun wool at home with primitive spindles and clunky looms. Leon personally designed a flying shuttle mechanism and modified the home looms into factory-scale machines. The women adapted quickly since they already knew basic techniques, so Leon was importing from Royce again, padding his wallet while building his economy. Speaking of money, the Radiant Fire treasury loot plus noble ransoms seemed like an infinite fortune when they first counted it. Then Leon started building things: roads, houses, streets, churches, a hospital, factories, underground tunnels, equipment purchases. Monster hunting brought decent income. But the monsters would eventually run out, unless another magic tide erupted, and monster attacks kept damaging infrastructure, which meant constant rebuilding costs. Simba told Leon he did not need to descend personally, then sent his elite squad into the dried well first. Leon promised to follow only after Simba confirmed the underground passage was safe. By this point, Leon had fully accepted that Leon had zero combat talent. Leon was born a strategist who got kicked into walls by skeleton sparring partners. Leon was now a walking pay-to-win character. Sunring on his left hand, 1,000 health points during daytime, 500 at night. Could block one witch-level attack, plus 200 health points passively. A trainee knight had about 100. Leon had the health of 17 one-star knights, ducted taped together. So even if something horrible waited at the bottom of that well, Leon was confident Leon would survive long enough to scream for help. After a few minutes, Simba's voice echoed up, "Let them go." She nodded, and they climbed down together into the darkness. Aurora launched a purification light flare to illuminate the passage. Leon put his larger hand over hers. They walked through the narrow mine tunnel together like an oddly mismatched father-daughter hiking trip through the underworld. An ordinary pickaxe, recently used by a goblin miner. So, the scary unknown race guarding their gold mine was a bunch of goblins with broken pickaxes. His skeleton scouts had called them a mysterious species. Very dramatic language for what turned out to be goblins. Leon got the fantasy world equivalent of moles with tools. Honestly, Leon felt a little bad for the guy, but not bad enough to share his gold mine. And new management has a witch, a skeleton army, a werewolf labor force, and 3,400 health points of pure stubborn refusal to die. Simba warned Leon that someone had been living beneath the mine. Every wolf turned to stare at him. That was his standard explanation for everything his information ability revealed. Aurora nodded, like this was completely normal, because she had been benefiting from his special eyes since day one. Simba reported that Leon's slave liberation speech had spread across every southern border town. But if anyone discovers goblins live here, they will turn around immediately. His slave liberation speech had created waves Leon never expected. Slaves demanded freedom and tried fleeing to Red Moon territory. People were hearing about a territory where slaves became citizens in 5 years. Red Moon territory was genuinely becoming livable. If they could maintain this momentum, settlers would keep coming and their population would grow naturally. Wherever goblins settle, every nearby village packs up and leaves. Another wolf added something even worse. Aurora and Leon exchanged identical looks of horrified surprise. A wolf scout found prisoners, and Leon immediately imagined a dramatic rescue inside the tunnel. Leon was already composing comforting speeches in his head, preparing his most gentle and reassuring facial expression. His prepared speech died in his throat. They had abducted a herd of wild sows and were apparently using them for breeding purposes. Deep inside the gold mine, Leon's insight eye identified goblin miners. The feared underground race had survived there with broken tools. Their hidden chambers also contained several captured pregnant wild boars. Even Leon needed a moment to process that ridiculous discovery. Yet goblins meant workers, tunnels, and mining knowledge already existed. Everyone else saw thieves guarding the territory's greatest treasure. Leon saw another discarded race that might become future power. Red Moon would rule because its lord transformed every monster into opportunity.